Under the warm lights of a family dinner, she sat silent, a daughter whose quiet strength had always been overlooked. They thought her uniform was just another job. They thought her medals were just stories. But when she stepped into that boardroom the next day, wearing the silver eagle of a colonel, the world shifted, her father's pride, her brother's envy, her mother's stunned silence. This is the story of Natalie Williams and how sometimes the quietest voices carry the most weight. Let's begin. Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. The winter wind swept down from the Rockies that evening, dusting the old highway in a soft, pale light. Natalie Williams tightened her grip on the steering wheel, her knuckles white against the worn leather. She had been away for 5 years, serving in distant deserts and high-tech command rooms. But tonight, she was just another daughter coming home. The headlights of her Jeep cut through the falling snow, glinting off the quiet buildings of Larkspur, Colorado, a town so small you could blink and miss it, but every street held a memory. Natalie's heart thumped with the echo of each mile, her army dress blues folded carefully in the bag on the passenger seat, hidden, like a secret she wasn't ready to share. She slowed as she turned onto Birchwood Lane, the narrow road that wound past the general store and the old post office. The house she'd grown up in waited at the end, warm lights glowing in the windows, a curl of smoke drifting from the chimney. For a moment, she let herself hope that tonight would be different. Natalie pulled into the driveway, pausing to breathe in the familiar scent of pine and wood smoke. She turned off the engine, the sudden silence pressing in around her. In the back of her mind, she could still hear the cadence of drill sergeants, the steady click of boots in formation. Here, though, there was only the soft hush of snow and the memory of a father's voice telling her this was never enough. She left her uniform in the Jeep, taking only her small overnight bag. Her combat boots thudded softly on the porch steps, each one a silent promise to keep the truth of who she was for now hidden. She didn't knock. She never had to. Inside, the air was warm and filled with the scent of roasted chicken and fresh bread. Her mother, Diana Williams, moved through the kitchen with the same quiet grace she always had. She looked up at Natalie with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're here," Diana said, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Your brother's already set the table." Natalie nodded. "It's good to see you." Mom, her father, Albert Williams, was in the living room, a thick binder of company reports balanced on his knee. He looked up when she entered, his blue eyes glinting with the same analytical focus that had made him a senior executive at American Shield Technologies. "Natalie," he said with a nod, "glad you could make it." Gregory was there too, lounging in one of the worn armchairs. At 30, he looked every inch the golden boy sharpsuit, polished shoes, and a confident smirk that always seemed to find its way to his lips. He didn't stand up, just raised his hand in greeting. "Sis, long time no see." "Gregory," Natalie replied, her voice steady. She took a seat at the table, the familiar creak of the old wood beneath her, a comfort and a warning. Dinner was a well-rehearsed performance. Diana served generous portions, her chatter focused on the small triumphs of Gregory's week, his new project at American Shield, his promotion to senior project manager, the praise from the CEO. Natalie listened, her face calm, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She knew this dance by heart. Gregory leaned back, swirling the wine in his glass with casual pride. "Shannon Murphy said she was impressed by my proposal. She thinks I'm ready to take on more responsibility." "That's wonderful, dear," Diana said, beaming at her son. "You've worked so hard for this. I always knew you had it in you." Albert grunted in agreement, his eyes flicking to Natalie only briefly. "And what about you? Natalie's still in the Army." "I suppose still in the Army," she said, her tone neutral. She offered nothing more. The truth of her current rank, the missions she'd led, the lives she'd protected, none of it had a place at this table. "Not yet." Her mother nodded politely, her interest already waning. "That's good, I suppose," she said. "Stability is important, but it's not like working at American Shield. There's real advancement there." Natalie didn't argue. She never had. She had learned long ago that her family didn't want to hear about satellite uplinks and classified clearances. They wanted to hear about market growth and quarterly projections about Gregory's world, not hers. She watched the flicker of the candles on the table, the way the soft light played across her father's lined face and her mother's carefully applied makeup. She wondered if they could see it in her eyes, the weight of command, the quiet authority she carried like a second skin, or if all they saw was the girl who'd walked away from a business degree to join the army instead. Gregory launched into a story about a recent project, his words easy and practiced. Natalie let them wash over her, her mind half a world away. She thought of the drone footage she'd reviewed just last month, the encrypted briefings she'd read under the hum of fluorescent lights. She thought of the silver eagle insignia folded carefully in her bag, the one that marked her as a full colonel, one of the youngest in the Army's Cyber Defense Command. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, she was just Natalie, the daughter who'd chosen a different path, and, in her parents' eyes, the daughter who'd chosen wrong. Dinner ended as it always did, with Gregory offering to help with the dishes and Diana insisting she could manage. Natalie stood slowly, her hands steady, her expression calm. "I'll get my bag from the car," she said. Albert glanced at her. "You're staying the night?" She nodded. "Just tonight." He gave a small, absent-minded nod, already turning back to his reports. Gregory was in the kitchen, laughing with Diana about a joke she'd missed. The warmth of their voices filled the house, a world apart from the chill that settled in Natalie's chest. She stepped out onto the porch, the cold night air biting at her cheeks. She paused, looking up at the sky. The stars were bright and sharp above the dark silhouette of the mountains. She took a slow breath, feeling the weight of the moment, this quiet return to a place that had never really seen her. In the car, she rested her hand on the uniform bag for a moment. The silver eagle glinted faintly under the cabin light, a small, silent testament to the life she'd built out there. Beyond this small town, beyond this narrow dining room. Natalie closed the car door and straightened her shoulders. Tomorrow, the truth would come. But tonight, she would let them believe she was still the girl who left with nothing more than a dream of something bigger. She stepped back inside, the warmth of the house closing around her like a gentle weight. Her mother smiled. Her father looked up and then away, and Gregory offered a half smirk of familiarity. Natalie nodded to them all, her face calm, her secrets held close. She took her place at the table once more, her silence a shield as strong as any she'd worn in the field. The night stretched out ahead, a final test of patience before the dawn, and Natalie, quiet and steady, was ready. The next morning dawned crisp and cold, the mountains dusted in white under a pale blue sky. Natalie rose early, her movements quiet and deliberate. She dressed in the dark, the polished brass buttons of her uniform catching the soft light as she moved. She pinned her silver eagle insignia to her collar with steady hands. Each piece of her uniform fit like a second skin, familiar, grounding. She slipped her feet into her polished black shoes, the final touch of a life built on discipline and purpose. Downstairs, the house was still and silent, the only sound the soft hum of the heater. Natalie paused in the kitchen doorway, her mother at the stove, humming softly as she stirred a pot of oatmeal. Diana looked up, startled, her eyes widening at the sight of the uniform. "Oh," she said softly, her voice catching. "You're in uniform today?" Natalie offered a small nod. "I have a meeting," she said simply. No explanation, no need. She reached for her coat, the fabric stiff and warm, and stepped out into the morning air. The drive to American Shield Technologies was short, but each mile felt like a small, deliberate step. She pulled into the lot and parked in the space marked Military Liaison, her eyes steady, her mind calm. She could feel the weight of the silver eagle on her collar, the quiet power it carried. Inside the glass and steel building, the air smelled of fresh coffee and ambition. She stepped through the doors, the click of her shoes on the polished tile drawing curious glances. Conversations faltered, and heads turned eyes tracking the crisp lines of her uniform, the authority in her bearing. She didn't flinch. She offered polite nods, a calm smile. Each step carried her closer to the conference room, where the future of a $1 billion contract would be decided, where her father and brother would finally see the truth of who she had become. The receptionist at the front desk stood quickly, her cheeks flushing. "Good morning, Colonel Williams," she said, her voice respectful, almost reverent. "Can I get you anything, coffee, water?" "Just directions to the main conference room," Natalie replied softly. The woman pointed down the hall, her hand trembling just slightly. Natalie offered a nod of thanks and moved on. As she walked, she let her mind settle into the rhythm of the moment. The weight of command was not new to her. She had carried it through desert outposts and cyber defense briefings. In rooms where every word was a calculation, today was no different. At the door to the conference room, she paused for a breath. Then she stepped inside, her eyes calm and clear. The room fell silent at her entrance. Around the long table sat engineers in crisp suits, executives with careful smiles, and at the head Shannon Murphy, CEO of American Shield Technologies. A woman of sharp intellect and precise words, known for seeing straight through to the heart of any matter. Shannon rose as Natalie entered, her eyes lighting with recognition. "Colonel Williams," she said warmly, extending her hand. "It's an honor to have you join us in person." Natalie took the offered hand, her grip firm and steady. "Thank you, ma'am," she replied. "I thought it was time to see things firsthand." She moved to the seat reserved for the military liaison, her father and brother watching with wide eyes. Albert's face was carefully blank, but his fingers drummed nervously on the polished table. Gregory looked pale, his confident smirk from the night before replaced by uncertainty. The meeting began, Shannon guiding them through the agenda with practiced ease. She spoke of timelines and deliverables, of contracts and milestones. Natalie listened, her posture calm, her eyes taking in every detail. When it was her turn to speak, she did so with quiet authority. "Before we proceed," she said, her voice even and measured, "I'd like to review the technical assessments and security protocols for the project." The room stilled. Papers rustled. Gregory cleared his throat, his hands fumbling slightly as he opened his laptop. "Of course, Colonel," he said, his tone strained. "I can walk you through our proposal." He began to speak, but Natalie watched him with steady eyes. She had read the proposal weeks ago. Every line of code, every diagram. She knew the gaps, the shortcuts he had taken to impress the board. She waited until he was done, her expression calm. Then she leaned forward slightly, her words deliberate. "Gregory, I notice you've recommended bypassing the secondary encryption protocol for speed. Can you explain how that aligns with our minimum security requirements?" Gregory blinked, caught off guard. "I thought it might streamline the interface," he stammered. "We can always add the secondary layer later. Once the system stabilizes." Natalie's eyes didn't waver. "That's not how security works," she said softly. "Especially not when this system is meant to protect classified military data. Omitting that layer now creates vulnerabilities that will only grow with time." The room was silent. Shannon's gaze flicked from Natalie to Gregory, her expression thoughtful. Albert shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his jaw tightening. Gregory tried to recover. "I can adjust the plan," he said quickly. "We can add the protocol in the next phase." "That's not acceptable," Natalie interrupted, her tone calm but firm. "This isn't a suggestion, it's a requirement." A murmur moved through the room. Engineers exchanged glances, the weight of Natalie's words settling over them like a quiet command. Albert's hand stilled on the table, his knuckles white. Shannon cleared her throat. "Gregory, we'll need to revise the timeline to include full compliance with the security protocols," she said evenly. "Colonel Williams is correct. There's no room for shortcuts here." Gregory swallowed hard, his face pale. "Yes, ma'am," he murmured. Natalie didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply sat back, her hands folded neatly on the table. She had spent years learning that leadership wasn't about being loud. It was about being heard, even in the quietest moments. The meeting moved on, each point of discussion passing under Natalie's calm, watchful gaze. She asked questions no one else thought to ask, questions about integrity checks, about fail-safes, about the lives that would depend on the technology this company was building. With each question, the balance of the room shifted. Gregory's voice grew smaller. Albert's posture stiffened, and Shannon, sharp-eyed and steady, nodded along, her respect for Natalie growing with every measured word. By the time the meeting adjourned, the weight of the room had changed. Natalie stood, her uniform crisp in the morning light that streamed through the high windows. She offered Shannon a polite nod. "Thank you for your time," she said quietly. Shannon smiled faintly. "The pleasure is ours. Colonel, we'll have those revisions to you by end of day." Albert rose, his movements slow and careful. He looked at his daughter as if seeing her for the first time. "Natalie," he said, his voice low. "I didn't know." "You didn't ask," she said softly. "Not an accusation, just the truth." Gregory lingered by the door, his shoulders hunched. For a moment, he met her eyes, saw the quiet certainty there, the calm power she carried. Then he looked away, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Outside, the winter sun glinted off the glass of the building, the sky pale and clear. Natalie stepped out into the cold air, her breath steady, her mind clear. The day was far from over, but she had said what needed to be said. She paused for a moment, feeling the silence of the morning settle around her. In that quiet, she felt the slow, steady beat of her own heart. She had never needed their approval, but standing there, she knew she had earned their respect whether they would admit it or not. And that, for today, was enough. The conference room emptied slowly after the meeting, people gathering their notes and whispered conversations drifting into the hallway. Natalie remained seated, her calm presence an anchor in the quiet swirl of movement. She watched them file out, her gaze steady and unhurried. Shannon Murphy lingered near the doorway, her eyes thoughtful as she studied Natalie. "Colonel Williams," she said, her voice warm but edged with curiosity. "May I have a moment?" "Of course," Natalie replied, rising to stand at attention. She moved with the quiet authority of someone who knew precisely who she was. Shannon gestured for her to sit, taking the chair across from her. The polished table still scattered with printouts and diagrams. "I want to thank you for your clarity today," Shannon said softly. "I think some of my team needed to hear that more than they realized." She paused, her gaze sharp. "But I suspect there's more to your role here than just oversight." Natalie didn't hesitate. She met Shannon's eyes, her voice calm and unwavering. "There is," she said. "I'm not just reviewing the project. I have final approval authority on every technical specification, every system architecture decision. Nothing moves forward without my sign-off." Shannon blinked, her surprise quickly replaced by respect. "That's quite a responsibility," she said quietly, "and a level of authority most contractors never see." "It's necessary," Natalie said simply. "This system will protect lives, American lives. Cutting corners isn't an option." The weight of those words settled in the room, and for a moment, there was only the faint hum of the heating vents above them. Shannon leaned back slightly, a small smile on her lips. "I see why they chose you," she said, "and I see why you're here." Natalie nodded, accepting the compliment without vanity. She rose, gathering her notes with the precision of a soldier. "If there's nothing else, ma'am, I'll prepare my formal report this afternoon." Shannon stood as well, offering her hand once more. "Thank you, Colonel Williams. I look forward to working with you." Their handshake was brief but firm, a quiet agreement between two women who understood the stakes. As Natalie stepped into the hallway, she found her father waiting just beyond the doorway. Albert's expression was carefully neutral, but his eyes searched her face as if trying to reconcile the daughter he thought he knew with the woman who had just commanded a room of seasoned engineers. He cleared his throat. Natalie, I didn't realize your role was so comprehensive. His voice was low, almost uncertain. She met his gaze, her face calm. Dad, I've been leading teams and managing classified projects for years. This isn't new for me. It's just the first time it's crossed into your world. He nodded slowly, his jaw tight. I see that now, he murmured. I should have seen it sooner. Natalie didn't respond. She let the silence speak for them both. The long years of distance and misunderstanding laid bare in a single moment. Gregory appeared behind Albert, his expression pale and drawn. His confident smirk was gone, replaced by something closer to disbelief. I don't understand, he said, his voice cracking. You're the final authority. You can stop this project if you want. She turned to him, her eyes steady. If the work doesn't meet the standards set by the Department of Defense, yes, she said, I have that responsibility, and I take it seriously. Gregory swallowed hard, his shoulders slumping. I thought I was the one making the real decisions, he said quietly. Natalie's expression softened, but she didn't look away. Gregory, she said, her tone gentle but firm, you're good at what you do, but this isn't just another product line or a quarterly target. This is national security, and it's my job to make sure we don't fail. For a long moment, Gregory said nothing. Then he looked away, his eyes dropping to the floor, the weight of her words settling on his shoulders like a sudden burden. Albert cleared his throat again, his voice rough. Natalie, I know I haven't always understood your choices, but today, I saw the way they listened to you, the way you held that room. His voice wavered. You've become more than I ever imagined. She held his gaze, her expression calm and measured. Dad, she said softly, I didn't choose this path to prove anything to you. I chose it because it mattered to me, and because I believed I could make a difference. His lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. He just nodded, a quiet acceptance in the line of his shoulders. Natalie saw the flicker of something in his eyes, pride, perhaps, or maybe regret for all the years he hadn't seen her clearly. The hallway was silent, the buzz of voices from the meeting room fading into the distance. In that stillness, Natalie stood taller, her uniform a testament to every moment she'd spent proving her worth to herself. She didn't need their recognition, but it was there now, written in the lines of her father's face and the slump of her brother's shoulders. Albert stepped closer, his voice low. I'm proud of you, Natalie, he said finally. I'm sorry it took me so long to say it. A small smile touched her lips, brief but genuine. Thank you, Dad, she said simply. It was enough. Gregory looked up, his eyes red around the edges. So what happens now, he asked, his voice small. With the project, with us, Natalie shifted her weight, her posture still military straight, but her voice soft. The project will go forward, she said, but it will meet the standards it needs to meet. I'll make sure of that. She paused, her gaze steady. As for us, that's up to you. Gregory nodded slowly, his shoulders sagging as if the fight had finally gone out of him. I'd like that, he said quietly. To try. Albert placed a hand on his son's shoulder, the first gesture of comfort Natalie had seen all morning. We'll figure it out, he said, his voice stronger now. We're still family. For Natalie, that was enough. She didn't need apologies or explanations. She didn't need them to understand every choice she'd made. She just needed them to see her, truly see her, and in that moment, she felt they finally did. She stepped back, the soft click of her shoes echoing in the hall. The morning sun spilled through the windows, catching on the brass of her insignia, casting a faint glow around her. She took a slow breath, steady and calm. She had faced down generals and foreign threats, balanced budgets that could make or break entire battalions. But this quiet battle for respect in her own family had always been the hardest. And today, for the first time, she felt like she had won, not with anger, not with loud words or demands, just with the steady, unshakable truth of who she was. She turned toward the exit, her shoulders square, her footsteps measured and sure. Behind her, she could hear the low murmur of her father and brother talking tentative, but real, a start. And for Natalie Williams, that was victory enough. The echoes of the meeting still lingered in the air as Natalie stepped out into the main hall. Her father and brother followed slowly behind her, the quiet shuffle of their shoes a muted chorus to the storm of thoughts that pressed between them. The hallway felt brighter somehow, the winter sun slanting in through the tall windows. For a long moment, no one spoke. Albert's hand rested on the back of a chair, his fingers curling and uncurling like he was working up the courage to say what he'd always held back. Gregory stood to the side, his shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on the floor. Finally, Albert cleared his throat. "Natalie," he said softly, his voice rough with words long overdue. "I owe you an apology." She turned to face him, her expression calm but open. She waited, patient as always, for him to find the shape of his thoughts. "I didn't see it," he said quietly, his eyes meeting hers with a raw honesty she'd never seen before. "I didn't see how much you'd grown, how much you'd achieved. I was blind to it, and I'm sorry for that." She nodded once, accepting his words without judgment. "I know, Dad," she said. "I never needed you to understand everything. I just wanted you to see me." Albert's mouth twitched, a sad, almost proud smile flickering at the edges. "I see you now," he said, his voice steady, "and I'd like to learn, if you'll let me, about your work, about the world you've built." A breath of relief eased into Natalie's shoulders. She didn't need to recount every mission or every sleepless night. She just needed this, a father's curiosity, finally awakened. "I'd like that," she said softly. Gregory shifted, his fingers drumming lightly against the wall as he searched for his own words. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by a hesitant vulnerability that Natalie had never expected. "You've changed," he said finally, his voice quiet. "I thought I was the one out here making things happen. But watching you today, it's like I was seeing you for the first time." Natalie's gaze didn't waver. "I'm still your sister, Greg," she said gently. "But I'm also a colonel, and that part of me doesn't go away when I walk through this door." Gregory swallowed, his jaw tightening as he looked at her. "I know," he said. "I see that now. And I'm proud of you, even if I never said it before." She let the words settle between them. No triumph in her eyes. No need to prove herself further. She simply accepted them for what they were, a step forward. "Thank you," she said quietly. Diana had been silent through it all, her hands clasped at her waist, eyes bright with an emotion Natalie couldn't quite name. When she finally spoke, her voice was low but sure. "I don't pretend to understand all the decisions you've made, Natalie," she said, "but I see the way people look at you now, the respect, the trust, and I realize maybe you were always right about what you needed to do." Natalie's shoulders eased at her mother's words, a soft light in her eyes. "I never wanted to prove you wrong," she said. "I just wanted to be enough." Diana stepped forward, her hand reaching out to rest lightly on Natalie's arm. "You've always been enough," she said softly. "I just didn't know how to say it until now." The hush that followed was gentle, a shared breath between them. No grand gestures, no dramatic confessions, just the quiet recognition that the girl who had once left home was standing there, fully seen at last. Natalie looked at each of them in turn, her father, her brother, her mother, and let the silence stretch just a moment longer. It wasn't a final resolution. She knew. There were years of distance and unspoken words that wouldn't vanish in a single morning. But this was a beginning. She straightened her shoulders, her uniform still crisp, the silver eagle catching the light as she turned back toward the exit. There was work to be done, reports to file and questions to answer, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like she was stepping out of the shadows of her own family. She paused at the doorway, glancing back one last time. Her father stood taller than she remembered, his expression a mixture of pride and wonder. Gregory watched her with something like respect, his usual arrogance softened to quiet awe. And her mother's eyes glistened, the flicker of a smile finally reaching her lips. Natalie let herself smile then, small and sure, as she stepped through the door. The cold winter air greeted her like an old friend, the bright sky above a promise of something more. She walked across the parking lot, each footstep steady and unhurried. She could feel the weight of every moment behind her, every doubt, every quiet battle she had fought. And yet, she carried no bitterness in her chest, only a calm, quiet strength that had always been hers. In that moment, Natalie Williams knew she didn't need the world to tell her she was enough. She had lived it. She had earned it. And now, as the sunlight glinted off the mountains and the wind whispered through the pines, she knew she was finally truly seen. She reached for the door handle of her Jeep, pausing to glance back one last time. The tall glass windows of American Shield Technologies gleamed in the morning light, a silent testament to everything she had become. Natalie took a breath, the cold air filling her lungs, crisp and clean. She stood a little taller, the silver eagle on her collar shining in the pale sun. No more proving, no more waiting for permission to be who she was. She pulled open the door and slipped inside, the quiet click of the latch echoing like a promise. As she started the engine and turned back toward the road, a small, resolute smile curved her lips. Sometimes, she thought, you don't need the world to see you, but when they finally do, when the people you love most see you for who you are, it's not just validation, it's healing. And in that healing, there is peace. Natalie Williams drove away from the building that morning with her head held high, the mountains rising in the distance like silent witnesses. She was ready to keep serving, to keep building, to keep being the woman she had always known herself to be. And as the quiet of the morning settled around her, she knew this wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning, and she was exactly where she was meant to be. In our darkest moments, kindness still finds a way, often in the quietest places. Not everyone who helps wants recognition. Some just need to know that today, someone isn't going hungry. And sometimes, that alone is enough to change a life. You may forget the story, but if no one retells it, history stays silent forever. Subscribe to Grateful Stories, where justice is honored, kindness is remembered, and no act of quiet heroism is ever lost.